Okay, Javed, we'll get started now and then we'll admit people as they come in. So, welcome
Of
everyone
course.
to what's going to be an amazing discussion, marketing in the age of AI. And I'm sure this is, a timely and very valuable discussion because AI is a tsunami that has hit us. It's really changing everything, we do, the way we market, and really fundamentally redefining who we're speaking to, how we understand audiences, and what authentic engagement looks like today. Before I hand things over to Javed, who will be presenting and moderating the session, just wanted to give a very quick recap of who we are at Viaka. Viaka is an angel network and global platform where people in the entrepreneurship space connected to the MENA region, come to connect and build on a global stage. Today, we have over 3,000 people in our orbit globally. We're continuously, this is our portfolio. We've invested in four companies so far, about to invest in our fifth one. We recently launched the Angel Network, so we're really proud of our momentum. And if you're interested in joining the Angel Network, please visit our website. We continuously hold in-person events in cities all over the world, North America, the MENA region, and in Europe. So to stay up to date, visit our calendar, which you can find on our website as well. Virtual events like this one include demo days, roundtables, coffee hours, ecosystem deep dives, and more. We also share very rich content with the public through our podcast and social channels and our monthly newsletters as well. So make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. All of this can be found on our website. And of course, our big flagship event coming up in Toronto in November, our MENA Rising conference. We have incredible people signed up attending so far, investors, professionals, founders, very rich agenda, and highly accomplished speakers. So if you can make it to Toronto, make sure to attend the event. So, yes, this is how you can reach out and visit our website. And now I'm going to hand things over to Javed. Javed, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Reem. Very excited to run this session today with all you guys here. So you guys can see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm gonna go in slideshow mode, make sure everything works. So I've been thinking about putting together a roundtable on this for months, and Reem and I we've been talking, and the um, background behind this is for me working with many startups and in the startup ecosystem, the amount of changes that I'm seeing, especially in the marketing arena, has been the most impactful across different GTM functions that I focus in. I work with companies on the sales side, on the post-sales side, on product side. But when somebody says, "Hey, where is the biggest impact of AI?" and I say, "I'm seeing a lot happening in marketing." So I wanted to kind of put some of those thoughts together, get a good group of people to come together and talk about it. We have an incredible lineup of panelists on this roundtable today. So let's dive into it and talk about how marketing is getting upended by rapid advancements of AI. So I'm going to introduce the panelists, or I'll let the panelists introduce themselves for a quick minute or so, and then I'm going to move forward with a quick talk on my side about marketing and how I think about marketing and where AI is coming in, and we'll quickly shift into Q&A after that. So Waleed, you're at the top.
Hey everyone, thanks, Javed. Great to be here. I'm the head of revenue over at Spiky, basically leading our revenue and growth initiatives. I have a background in building and scaling startups. Specifically, what's exciting about this is This has really been top of mind for us at Spiky, especially when it comes to kind of the sales and the marketing motions and marrying them together. And of course, Spiky.ai has AI in its name, right? So we're leveraging a lot of AI to do all of that. So I'm excited to get into the topics today.
Great. Thank you, Nima.
Thanks, Javed. Hi, everyone. My name is Nima. I'm the CEO and founder of Will Be Live. We're a B2B marketing agency that helps our clients in brand strategy and demand creation efforts, go-to-market motions being a focus. My background is 15 years in B2B, and before we pivoted 2 years ago and being a services agency supporting mid-market and enterprise level clients in brand strategy and demand creation, we were a talent agency for executives. We believe that the next wave of the creator economy would be B2B. Part of our service offering is still in thought leadership or, for lack of a better term, personal branding. And I'm excited to dig deep because there's a lot that's changing in our world today, and yeah, happy to share more.
Great. Thank you, Omar.
Thanks, Javed, and thanks everyone for joining. So I'm actually an engineer by background, and interestingly enough, as time goes on and AI is more prevalent, that engineering background's actually getting very, very relevant into marketing. So I got in the marketing space back in 2006 because of all the growth happening in B2B SaaS at the time. For reference, Salesforce was proving out the cloud model. HubSpot was just in its infancy, and a lot's changed since then. So I've had the pleasure to work at startups, scale-ups, and enterprise companies over the last 16 years, everything from CRM, voice biometrics, cybersecurity, and networking solutions. I'm VP marketing at Studeo right now, which is a real estate AI platform for top real estate agents in North America. And more than ever in the last year and a half, AI is just taking over everything in marketing. So been using AI every day in my personal life and on the marketing side, and excited to share some insights on this discussion.
Excellent. Thank you all. Quick background about me. I used to work at many different companies in Silicon Valley. I'm based in San Francisco area. If you guys don't know me yet, people who are on the call today, on the roundtable today, but some of the companies that I worked with in the past is on the left. Nowadays, I am the CEO and founder of High Plains Advisory, where we do a lot of growth strategies and go-to-market strategies for startups and scale-ups. And we have partnerships with accelerators, network groups like Viaka, Angel Networks, as well as VCs across the world. So moving on. First thing that I want to talk about is kind of set the context for our talk, the startup marketing journey, as I'm speaking with many different startups, advising them as I am working on building some of the early stage go-to-market strategies. Marketing becomes a focal point as far as how they want to portray themselves in the market. So the first the first few minutes on my talk really focuses on stage-based brand evolution and how AI is reshaping it. So if you think about starting off as a startup, your goal is to build a brand that is out there that people can relate with, that people can see clearly what your messaging is, that starts to generate predictable, scalable leads through some well-defined channels that we all know about, like outbound proactive brand persona-driven engagement, inbound strong brand presence, etc. So, and the content that attracts your ICP, ideal customer profile. And these two are going to be a key factor for any startup to start to focus on as they start to bring together their story into the world. And we focus a lot on that. And the network base comes in a little later. I'll talk about that a little bit. But every startup who's going out to the market has to think about creating their brand and persona in front of the world. And I have some notes on how I think about doing a lot of that from a playbook perspective. So I'm going to spend 5 minutes talking about that. The network based is very interesting. Uh, I run into lots of founders who have a really strong network, and they're able to use that network effect to start to grow their company and grow their business. And they're happy with it, but they really haven't focused on building their brand and persona, and vice versa. I also have founders who I work with who has very strong inclination of brand and persona creation, and also and does not have a lot of network based on how they have grown up and how they're building their product and their startup. So the message here really is that think of all of these as a complete package. Don't focus on one versus the other one, and together they make a killer effect. So step one is brand maturity model. I'm not going to go through each one of the items on my slide. You guys will get a copy of this later on. You guys will see the recording, but I want to kind of set the stage from a high level. At an early stage pre-launch, you know, it's never too early to start to focus on building your brand and persona for your startup. And as you're thinking about doing that, what are some of the outputs that you need to think about as manifestation or proof as far as you're doing a good job at it? That's down at the bottom. And what are some of the actions that you should be taking in order to make that happen on your day-to-day? And what can AI do along those lines? So this is a snippet of it. It usually goes much deeper than that, and we have templates and methods to go drive a lot of these for the founders, etc. And there are different AI tools, but that gives you a little bit of insight into how I think about early stage, what each one of the companies should do, which is creating their presence out in different channels in order for people to recognize and understand what they're about. So that's the early stage. Launch and pre-seed is, I typically think of those months, and it's months 6 to 18, it varies. So you're focusing on voice discovery and consistency, right? So what that means is that you've established your brand and persona. You've got a good website out there that is driving some traffic to it. You're starting to experiment on understanding how you could use website as a channel to amplify your voice. You're starting to experiment with outbound, the messaging that you're starting to get from the website and your early stage calls. Can you use those in outbound or not? Um, those are going to be the focus in launch and seed stage. Super important. I publish regularly in different channels, etc. Experiment with content formats, engage with authenticity, right? Because content still now is king with proliferation on content with AI coming in. People are always still looking for good content versus junk content. And there are many ways of inserting AI into this. Um, in automated content posting calendars is one. Helping with some of the content reactions, understanding the intent of some of this content creation, content reaction, engagement. Those are all going to be your helpers in thinking through a lot of these stages of your brand and persona development. Build your content strategy. I think this is super important. I have it. The founders that I work with has it. The founders that I work with don't have it. I recommend them having it. I work with one founder who has over 30,000 followers on LinkedIn, and his goal is to do 3 posts a day versus 2 to 3 posts a week. And his team says that, hey, so and so really rules LinkedIn because he gets a lot of impressions, etc. on LinkedIn. Guess what? His inbound is pretty strong in general. He is getting a lot of inbounds. He is getting a lot of referrals, etc. as leads into his startup. And the startup has grown tremendously this year. But he's been working on it for some time, and he's at that stage. So keep focused on building that content strategy, etc. Um, Next one is fourth stage brand seed to Series A. Think about voice solidification, think about expanding outbound, think about outreach programs, The output is starting to see the followers grow. Output is consistent inbound leads, etc. Some of the actions are thought leadership type of items. Diversify your lead management, lead magnet, and experiment. It's not just LinkedIn, but think about conferences, think about other things like podcasts, which we'll talk about today quite a bit. So start to branch out in that seed to Series A stage. And the last part is multi-voice ecosystem, which is Series A and beyond. Spread it across the team, right? Team amplification, diversified programs based on results. You're not really founder-led anymore. You're going beyond founder-led. And that's the output. Brand becomes independent of founder, referral engine is active, and AI enablement is really coming into full force at that point. So I have two tables here, which kind of outlines my thought process on how B2B versus B2C enterprise strategies that startups can take, things like network-led, and what are some of the AI enhancements in each one of those phases. Or you say, okay, if I'm doing outbound, what can I use AI for? Huge amount of progress that's going on in the world today and in those areas. I've personally been involved in building outbound motions at scale that is personalized for hundreds of lists, hundreds of people on the list based on what's going on within their world at that given time, at that given moment. And without AI, we could not personalize at that scale. So outbound is going through seismic change. Again, each one of these entry point strategies that startups can take and adopt are going through a huge amount of change as well. So this slide kind of talks about the fact that choose the right strategy in the AI era and use AI to really accelerate your ability to diversify, personalize, experiment, and execute much faster. And that's how companies that are fast-growing companies out there are becoming successful out in the world. Everybody knows about Lovable and the type of the last slide really is control rollout. We are getting inundated with so many tools, and we are getting inundated by so many ideas, so many thoughts. But if you have a company out there where people are utilizing their own thought process in rolling out AI, well, their own individualistic thought process, and it's not a combined thought process that is best driven for your company to be successful. So I'm very big proponent of controlled rollout to make sure that your AI strategy gets the right amount of attention and you're able to really make an impact in your day-to-day for your AI enablement within your company and your organization. So there are many frameworks out there. There's one framework that I've recently used and I have seen it work very well. Triage, execute, align, and measure. And each one of these boxes means something that, hey, you're triaging to figure out high impact AI ready activities, and you're going through a methodical approach of understanding why they're high impact. Example, ICP formulation drops from 40 hours to 44 hours with AI. That really is a big time saver as well as effort saver. So that one could be high on your high impact list. And then you start to execute those and you start to execute it methodically as far as what are the tools to use, how do you measure the early stages of those tools, how do you get the team to come aboard to use those versus using their own tools, etc. And then overall metrics and efficiency tracking across the company on key metrics that are going to be impactful for you to get a really good AI enablement within your organization. So that's it on the slide side. So we're going to move on to panel discussion. Again, Omar, Nima, and Waleed, you guys are here. We're going to start off the panel discussion with a couple of thoughts and comments. And then I'm going to go to Omar first. So one thing that I was talking about is that, the changes in thinking through brand and persona development as well as outbound emails and other channels, right? So, when I think about brand and persona development, we are going through and um, understanding what are the value messaging for our startups and our businesses out to the world, and we are portraying it. One example that I'm working on is we are creating a master brain type of document utilizing AI and utilizing different calls with customers, etc., as well as our value proposition. And then we're utilizing that to start to create outbound emails. And we're utilizing that to also refine the ICP of who we want to send these emails to. And that's getting automated more and more versus us having to do a lot of the content, etc. So, outbound email and other activities based on the next level of refinement on brand and persona development. I'm seeing huge changes in the last 3 to 4 months, right? So, Omar, I'll bring you in first with the first question as, you know, the recipient side, there's more and more emails in our inboxes, right? And I was speaking with the CTO or CIO a couple of weeks ago at a conference, and I'm like, well, you're my ICP. What's your method of kind of controlling your inbox? And he's like, well, when I'm there in the morning, I go through and I archive a bunch of different emails, right? So from his perspective. So as marketers, as driving some of this outbound, um, now that AI tools make some of these personalization, etc., easier, how do you think that we can make your email stand out more?
Thanks, Javed. And just to start off, I'm a big fan of outbound email, especially in the startup and scale up space. Outbound's been a tactic being used like since the early 2000s, almost since email was invented. And that's because it works, but it needs to be done right. So in terms of use cases, it's one of the best ways to get early feedback on your value prop and test out your messaging for market fit. And once you've found the right formula, it's a great way to scale up your outreach. And I'm not alone in this. Most startups that I talk to are testing out their outbound motions. So besides the fact that all your prospects are on email, one of the key differentiators from the other channels is that kind of one-to-one undivided attention you get when a prospect does open that email. And that's because they're just viewing the message. They're not distracted by their social feed, or they're not distracted by all the ads that they're seeing on a web page. Another reason it's popular is it can be super cost effective, especially compared to paid ads or other channels. As long as you're hitting the right people with the right message, you can actually get pretty good conversion rates. And then the third reason it's so popular is how scalable outbound is. Again, once you've cracked that formula, and that's really the hard part, you can scale that up to hundreds or thousands of prospects pretty easily. That being said, there's a catch. Everyone today is using AI to personalize emails, and as you mentioned, the bar is getting higher and higher. Before simple personalization was enough, now what used to work just gets lost in the noise. So there's a lot of tools like Clay that give you all the intel you could want about your prospects quickly, tools like Instantly that help you do that outbound at scale. But if you're doing what everyone else is doing, you're gonna have trouble standing out. So again, tactics like that used to work, like congrats on your funding round, or mentioning the CEO, the CEO priorities found in a news release or a conference aren't quite as impactful as they once were. So really, to your point, how do you make your email the one that gets open, read, and actioned on? And the answer is pretty simple, but it's hard to execute, and that's hyper personalization. So it's about going one level deeper than what other marketers or your competition is doing, trying to find uh, that unique extra step that others aren't doing. So I'm going to share an example from my time working at Studeo.ai, that real estate content platform for real estate agents that I mentioned, and how we used outbound email pretty successfully. So we were targeting the top 5% of real estate agents by their gross commission income. That's basically how much money they make a year from selling homes. So the first step was that deep research. So we created AI agents using Clay. They would go on to Realtor.com and Zillow, and they would scrape all the agents. But what we did was pull pull the info on their current and historical listings. So the listings they have currently, the ones they had before, and we used a formula to number one, identify what their biggest pain point was based on that. So it could either be in terms of winning more listings, they didn't have enough listings, or that they had listings but they weren't moving fast enough. And this was a huge problem, still is right now, but especially a shift we saw earlier in the year. So number one is getting honed in on specifically what their pain point is using the available data. Then the next piece is the subject line. So we actually crafted super specific subject lines using the actual listing. What we found was their biggest pain point listing in the subject line. So as an example, 123 Maple Street would be right in the subject line. And that because that was top of mind to them, again, based on the formulas we extrapolated, that like tripled our open rates. So once you're in the email itself, what's the content? What's that message that you're giving them? So we kept it really simple. We asked if they wanted to see a video of our solution in action on that specific listing. Again, this is differentiating from the other messages that they'd be getting in their email because no one's really talking about pulling their specific listing there. Um, and as long as they responded, even if they responded yes or no, because on cold outbound, all you need is a response to be able to add a link there to get not get blocked by the spam filter. The second email was actually a link to a landing page with that video of their listing as it would look like on our platform. So it's not the final asset, but a really good preview on video to entice them. And then we used on-page scoring to see who who clicked the link, where they interacted on the page, how much of the video they viewed to score them. And then based on the scores, we would do the follow-up and book them in. And we were actually able to, so this worked really well, and we were able to scale this up to thousands of emails a month. And we started closing about 20% of all our deals from this channel. So we got triple the open rates, triple the demos booked, and triple the closed deals. And why we went one level beyond what everyone else was doing and got super specific about their biggest pain point. In this case, from their actual listings on Realtor.com. So to summarize, everyone's or a lot of people are using outbound. There's a lot of noise, and the key is just to get that other level of personalization and get creative beyond what
Yeah.
AI is enabling everyone else to do.
Yeah. No, that's very good. And thank you for going through that detailed example. Super helpful. I'm just going to add one layer to it and keep moving on. One of my successful email campaigns over the course of last 2-3 months with a startup founder that I was driving, um, what he and I figured out as part of his research, he figured out some really impactful keywords that were top of mind for his ICP. And he's in performance management space. And in performance management, in the mind of ICP, like CIOs, the keywords that really were impactful were quiet quitting. Quiet quitting, I didn't know about it, but he started to hone down on it. is a terminology that is applicable in ICP in the size of X amount of companies, where the size is about 150 to 200, where employees are getting fed up with the way the company's running, and they're moving towards quitting quietly. So he used that in a subject line in a email campaign, and he got a really good result from that campaign that ended up to be a pilot, which he's running towards conversion. So that also impactful, top of mind type of terminology. Also, I have seen work in these outbound emails, etc. So thank you, Omar. I'm going to move to Waleed next with a quick question as far as, you know, your startup Spiky.ai is working on, bringing together a couple of different areas of called recording, call intelligence, customer buying intent, etc. Um, and you're in the crux of um, turning that into sales enablement as well. So how do you drive the culmination of sales with the marketing motions that go into sales and generate more revenue for your company as head of growth there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really goes back to what you guys were speaking about, Javed, earlier when you were presenting on the three motions: inbound, outbound, and networking. And then kind of going back into what he just discussed as well for the outbound motions. The challenge in trying to figure out an early stage company is there's a bunch of opportunities out there and a bunch of activity that you can do to, bring those opportunities to the table, right? But we realize that just running one, motion, go-to-market motion, whether that's outbound, inbound, or networking, is not enough. And in isolation, they don't really do much, and it's kind of wasteful. So what we've really decided there is kind of merging the two into one growth motion, specific from the outbound perspective, and then also from that networking perspective. And we're using AI as kind of like a connective tissue for that. So what that means is that, like, for example, one initiative I've been working on recently is a podcast, and really using the podcast as organic material to pump out content to my network, to Spiky's network, to give leaders that are within our ICP a kind of a voice to kind of talk about the challenges, solutions they're running into in the space, the tools that they've been using, things like that. So I've done, I think already like 5 episodes so far. And just recently I started an outbound sequence specifically on email. And it's been leading to a lot of meetings booked for episodes, to be honest. And typically what I'm doing is I'm really leveraging AI to kind of iterate on the messaging quickly and seeing what would resonate with folks. And then also creating this feedback loop between the podcast output and then inputting that back into the emails and creating a newsletter from that as well. So, for example, I'll get kind of like the top 3 insights from the past 4 episodes, and then I will put that into the newsletter. And then people who are subscribed to our newsletter, they'll be able to see, hey, here's the kind of the weekly digest of what these top leaders talked about. So that kind of builds this conviction or empowerment around what I've been doing. And a lot of leaders, they like that. They like seeing, oh, hey, one of my buddies from this other company was on the episode. It seems like that's really interesting. Let me tune in, or let me see if I can become a guest onto that podcast. So that's kind of tying in the networking and the outbound piece together. So in short, we're kind of like replacing the marketing hands-off to sales approach and really creating this feedback loop between, the outbound motion and back into the networking aspect to improve our storytelling and tying in the sales and then the marketing aspect together.
Super cool. A couple of thoughts on that is I think, everything that you described, everything that Omar described, And I also give an example about quiet quitting, etc. Just a quick reality check that a year ago or 6 months ago, for us to be able to get into that level of understanding of the customer's intent or the voice, etc., would not be possible, because now we are using a lot of these AI tools, and we don't go into a lot of those in this roundtable here. But your ability to synthesize the podcast and understanding what people are talking about, right? Your ability to go into that level of intent understanding. There's it is all AI first nowadays, versus us having to go through and listening to those episodes and figuring those out. So let's just make sure that we kind of bring that to the focus in the front. The second part is, I think also, I know what Spiky does, but for people who are not familiar with what Spiky does, maybe you could do like a 1 minute summary of what Spiky is doing and what kind of value you're providing and where you're taking the company. I think that's
Yeah,
going to put
absolutely.
your answer in context.
Yeah, absolutely. So Spiky is a predictive revenue operating brain. We come in and think of us as like the central nervous system to the revenue team. We sit on top of your tech stack, ingest all these conversational data points to give insights, deep insights to revenue leaders and even individuals that are boots on the ground actually selling to prospects. And what that looks like is that you then have the insights and information to understand what your best sellers are doing, what's moving the needles, what's winning deals, and how you can replicate those behaviors across the team and even across deals to really improve your pipeline. So that's in a nutshell what we're doing. In terms of like who we're targeting and who we're going after, of course, anyone that fits the revenue umbrella. So I would say under the marketing vertical, under sales, revenue operations, enablement, all of these kind of values or what we're solving for is really enablement, coaching, deal velocity, pipeline hygiene and health, really bumping the needle for increasing ARR with the existing pipeline that you have. So yeah, that's a little bit more on what Spike is about.
Great. Thank you so much. Over to you, Nima. So B2B marketing, what are some of the trends and changes that you're noticing? You've been at it for 15 plus years. You've grown a company and the company is scaling. And where is AI having a direct impact in what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Javed. I think, not to sound repetitive here, I've noticed this shift happening in early 2018, really, where there was this added layer of consideration from a B2B buyer, thinking of no longer the number of connects or in-person meetings that you've had with a prospect, but this deeper understanding as to who the individual is and company, based on the problem that needs to be solved from the prospect's mind. So I think about it right now as we fast forward, right, 7 years later, and with the pandemic really escalating things in a digital capacity and AI further kind of changing the cycle of sales as far as I'm concerned for the prospect. A lot of the things that I'm seeing right now fits into two categories. The first being kind of priming the audience member or the prospect to think a certain way, educating them around the content. We think about it as like 10 to 15 different passive and active touch points that individuals would need to see in order to recall your brand the moment they have the problem that your company solves. And then on the flip side, proving. So there's priming and then there's proving. Once that prospect is ready to buy the product that you sell, how does marketing and sales enable one another with the help of AI, right? And that's deep market intelligence, that's understanding who the individual behind the buying behavior is, right? A lot of the times in B2B in particular, there's 5 to 15 different buyers at the table making a decision for that company, right? So, a lot of the tools that we've been now given is enabling super agency for marketers and sales professionals, right? And then like a deep level of not only company understanding, but the individuals behind the decision maker. What does delight really mean to that person? That I think is like really what I'm really excited about, because it can create a level of intentionality that needs to be tactfully done. And I think that's where the thinking really comes in, and like how to provide an experience to a user. Those are the two worlds that I'm seeing really being impacted by AI in the context of B2B today.
And then how do you understand the intent behind the likes or the emotion behind the likes, for example?
The likes on social, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a nuance here that I wanted to highlight, right? The attribution model is broken in B2B, right? A like doesn't necessarily mean that an individual is ready to buy. And
Mhm.
for a lot of the work that we do in financial services and even venture, there's this what we like to think of a silent majority that's viewing the content, not necessarily engaging with the post, but yet seeing it. When I also think about the social content that we create for our clients, 95% of the target audience that our clients are speaking to are out of market to purchase their product, right? So it's like, if they're out of market and they're not engaging with the content, in fact, I'll go as far as to say it's been proven that the first 70% of the buying, journey for a prospect in B2B is anonymous. Right. So you really don't know whether or not they're actually receiving the message. And now with AGO, they're getting that deep insight and making more educated decisions in the process. So I would not equate a like to a buying signal today.
Yeah.
There's so much more nuance. Human behavior is messy, and we'd like to obviously make note of that and further target that ICP if it in fact fits within the constructs of the customer that the client has won deals from, right? Do they have a right to win in that category? But in no way is it the like, signal de resistance, right? That we double down
Yeah.
and say, okay, let's go. Like this guy just liked our post. Let's hit him up with like 5 different ways of talking to him, podcasts and email. And it's just like that's another thing that I do want to point out, by the way. We're constantly, particularly in B2B, because quite honestly, 5, 7, 10 years ago, B2B didn't need to show up the way it needs to show up right now, right? Deals were done on spec sheets in some of the work that I've done within larger manufacturing firms or even in tech. We have been desensitized to content that has come out and are automatically tuning out content that is interrupting us. Right?
Mhm.
And B2B, I think, is notorious for this, where they're like, let's talk about how great we are, not about the pains and education that we can provide our audience members around the considerations that they have when they have 10 different options to choose from. Right. So there's a lot there that we can unpack,
Yeah.
but like there's so
Yeah. I'm
much
just
to be
gonna,
said about
I
one
know.
post, one like, and how that's not the story that we should be telling ourselves.
I mean, for you, you're creating the brand and persona for some of your clients. So looking at that macro view and understanding how to drive that macro view based on some of these micro signals must be super interesting. And you have so much more ability to discern what's happening at the micro level to drive that macro view. I'm going to give one example of the like and the engagement that I have built recently with a company, fintech world. We have targeted industry groups in fintech, and we have used marketers to go after some of these industry groups' attendants, understood who are part of this fintech groups, and this is all on LinkedIn, by the way. And we have engaged with LinkedIn content as marketers, and we have utilized the likes, etc., to understand the intent of them by doing posts and them hitting like or comment or etc. and us engaging in conversations with them and driving leads from those areas. So that's more direct. It's not super duper scalable, of course, but driving some of these engagements through automated tools, etc., that even LinkedIn provides and third parties provide, is another area that I'm starting to look into that becomes a wide area for us to investigate with or play with in order to drive some of the more intentful buyers or intentful listeners of our pitch for a company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a hyper specific kind of tactic that can be taken to get the attention of audience members.
Yeah.
I just worry about the automation of the conversation that's happening between
Hmm.
businesses and their potential customer, right? And
Hmm.
the reason why I say that is, I'm seeing these new tools come out where it's like, oh, automate your comments on LinkedIn. And it's like, but that's the conversation that you're having with like people. At this point, it's like a customer service line. You know,
Hmm.
you don't want to speak to, well, some people do actually, but like that's your voice. Like that's your identity in many ways. And audience members are really, really like tuned in to like an interruption. I call it an interruption because oftentimes it is like just a templated response versus like a nuance of respect around we value your perspective and I'm actually going to like add to the conversation to whatever you're having as opposed to like here's this like tool that can automate our things so that we can worry about what's more important, making the product better as opposed to like
Yeah.
doubling down on the relationship with our customers. Both very valuable, but they either one can't be compromised in the process.
Yeah.
Me-
Omar,
Can
Waleed,
I?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I wanted to say something, and I think this goes back to kind of like Omar, your discussion, and Nima. I heard this one startup I was talking to, one of the founders, was saying that they actually don't automate anything, and they strictly use signals being fed through Clay, basically, to get really, really targeted and then actually have those conversations with those prospects, like manually, reaching out to them, talking to them, because more times, often than not, you'll put them on an automation and they'll notice that like maybe someone else from the company is talking to them and then they get an automated email from them or something like automated comment or whatever it is. That relationship, that trust is broken now. Like you're just another kind of number in the machine of our prospects that we're reaching out to, right? So
Mhm.
there is a huge fine line, I would say, between kind of automating part of kind of your go-to-market, but at the same time, maybe there's a top list of prospects that you really want to take care of that relationship and mostly use AI for more signal-based kind of like understanding rather than kind of automating things there.
Yeah. The human in the loop is still super important.
Yeah.
Omar, any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I think engagement, right? Identifying the right groups or even on an individual level, the right thought leaders in the industry is a really good strategy. The approach I've taken, like on a personal level, but that could be applied to business, is find because you can only do so much, right? You can't really automate this process fully. Is find like the top 3 to 5, either for my case, LinkedIn influencers, or the top 3 to 5 groups that you want to go after. And what I try to do on the LinkedIn influence side is subscribe to their updates. So examples of people I follow are Kieran Flanagan, who's head of HubSpot marketing, and he talks a lot about AI, and some
Mhm.
other people in the AEO or GEO space. So I
Mhm.
have my own list of 5 people. I'm looking at as soon as they post, getting notified as soon as they post, and trying to be that early comment, because that's a great way to kind of leverage their following. Presumably, they have the same ICP following them that you're going after,
Yeah.
and making a smart comment on it. That's a personal level, but it could be applied to those industry groups. So there is benefit of being first to market, in this case, first to comment, and you have to do it consistently. If you keep showing up, you're going to get naturally more inbounds. I notice from my profile when I do comment, I'm getting a lot more views as well. So I think it applies to
Yeah,
both.
totally. Um, no, we could be talking about these topics quite a bit. For the sake of time, we have 5 minutes left. I do want to leave some time for people who are attending to open up the floor and ask us any questions. Now that you all know what we do, what our background is, what's happening in your world, where we could provide you some feedback, perspective, or something that you've heard from us where your use cases apply. So the floor is open. You can unmute yourself and speak out.
Hello, it's Evelyn here. I have a couple of questions. You've touched a little bit on the scale of things, right? So when quantity comes into play, right, we're talking about scrapping, customizing the content and so on, but at which point we start thinking about the amount of customers, right? Like the quantity and when it's worth or what is worth basically to customize. The second question is, one of you mentioned hyper customization. And again, in today's world where things do not yet work perfectly, doesn't it require more monitoring, ensuring that the quality of things and so on? So really becomes even maybe more demanding to keep things relevant. Thanks.
I'll take the hyper-personalization one, and let the panelists take the other one. So hyper-person, and I'll keep my answers short for the sake of time as well. But Evelyn, a great question. So hyper-personalization is scary. If I have 500 in my email list that I want to hyper-personalize, I'm starting to use a lot of the AI workflow tools to start to drive personalization. And I'm doing point checks to see whether they are on point or not before I start to extend and scale them. And at some point, I'm going to put a stop to it and not get into too much personalization all at the same time. I'm going to run it for a few months and start to see what my metrics are and how impactful the before and after is before before I start to adopt it more. So think of that start, as crawl, walk, run approach with lots of utilization of AI prompts, comparison across many of the LLMs out there, but start to create AI workflows using a lot of these workflow tools to enable hyper-personalization in anything that you're trying to get done. Yeah. Anybody else want to take the first one?
The first one being, sorry, I know there were two. One was about scale. The second one was about scale, and the first one was about, what was it about?
One was about like when does it make sense? I think Waleed, you touched as well on this. Like when does it make sense to automate certain things and when it doesn't, right? Because maybe the quantity of things, the quantity of your customers that you want to reach is not really significant. So maybe manual work is better than actually doing all the process, right? So that's the question about the quantity. When is there a threshold when these kind of tools become more relevant than doing things manually?
So I do like the approach of starting manually. I think the threshold is really business dependent. Different industries are going to have different threshold rates on the engagement. But to start, I would do it manually. Javed had a really good point on the trigger words earlier on. Like there's certain words that will get the opens, that will get the responses. So I think it's about manually testing those first. As you're starting, as you're starting to scale up, do the spot checks for sure. Like you should be keep it manageable so that you can see that the output of the AI is actually relevant, and keep optimizing that. I think once you have that fit, and that threshold, when you start scaling it up, the numbers themselves, like if you start scaling up to thousands, what I saw at Studio is certain times like, oh, we're getting, for some reason, the open rate drops or the engagement rate dropped a lot. And when we dug into it, something had changed on like the messaging side, or there was a glitch with the software. So I'd say once you start getting into scale, just monitor the engagement rates. And if they're skewing from from where they were, then dig a level deeper there.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Omar. Yeah.
Omar.
Anyone else before we close? Questions?
Yeah, one thing I would say is, I even track back to my consulting days working in B2B, specifically B2B. I remember my former boss saying how many accounts does it take to be successful? And for the sales reps on our team, I always say only one, right? Because that account could be millions of dollars for the business. So to Omar's point, it really does depend on, the total contract value or the sale and the nuances that your competitors are also taking into consideration in order for that purchase to happen. So it depends, really.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll take one more
Yeah,
question, Junaid. Nice to see you.
yeah, same here. My question is to Omar that how you handle the bounces over the cold email campaigns, because recent time whenever we use mostly the AI templates and all, we found is the number of as the bounce rate has increases. So whether you have faced similar thing, and if you do, that how you handle that.
Yeah, so okay, that's a great point. So what we did, okay, so there's an issue of deliverability when you're doing outbound, especially when you start scaling it. So the recommendation is as you're starting not to actually use your own domain name, because if that gets blacklisted, then like that's going to be really hard hole to dig yourself out of, right? And you're not going to be able to scale it. So what some providers do, so we worked with a consultancy, they used instantly.ai, but what they do is they actually go and warm up a few inboxes beforehand. So they're using names similar to your brand domain, but not the exact brand domain. And it takes a few weeks to get them to warm up, and they would do like 5 to 10 different domains at a time, and that gets around the high bounce rates or getting blacklisted. Two is having a clean list itself, right? If you're getting a lot of bounces, either you're getting flagged as spam as one, or you don't have actually the right email address. So the list quality is a piece to look into, and then best practices on outbound email. Like the first email should not include a link. It should not include an image. Those are getting picked up by like Google, like Gmail spam filters, and they won't get through. So that might be a reason. What you want to have on your very first email is just really compelling text, and you want a yes or a no. Even if it's a no, as soon as as soon as they respond to you, that gets like greenlit, and that's when you can follow up with a second email that does include a link and doesn't get flagged there. So those are a few best practices if you are getting a high bounce rate.
And I'm just going to add one more to that is that be careful between North America and Europe and other parts of the world, because the rules are so different in Europe, much stricter. Yeah. So if you are in that scope, be careful. You could get flagged really, really harshly in Europe under GDPR, etc. All right, so we are officially over time. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. It was great to have everybody on. Reem, any
Fantastic.
final words?
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank
That
you.
was a
Bye-bye.
fantastic session. Fantastic. Masterclass, honestly.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Amazing.
Thanks,
Thank you.